Hey team, this week we talked to Joe Daymond, who is one of New Zealand's best and funniest comedians. He also looks a lot like Seamus.
You can't say that.
I can't. It's all right, listeners. It's okay. We talk about it in the episode. He gets it all the time. It's hilarious. Joe is one of the fastest rising stars in the New Zealand comedy scene. We talk about his rise, his tour of America, all the best stuff in between. This one is a cracker.
Yeah, he's all over my social media, which speaks a lot, seeing as I'm so old. And he actually breaks down some of the new concepts for people like me in the episode too.
This episode is brought to you by TAB. Download the new app today and get your bet on. Joe Daymond, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Oh my goodness. I have to say, the amount that I already know, like a thoroughness, is thoroughness a word?
Yeah, thoroughness.
The amount that's gone into this, I'm genuinely impressed. You guys can do absolutely nothing and I'll walk out of here like, damn, that was amazing. The amount of research I know you've done, and then even if we refer to none of it,
yeah,
still very
And that's
impressed.
the beauty of foreplay.
The one
familiar.
thing that stood out for me in researching this app, which we're really excited about, is you and Seamus have a very similar way of connecting with people, I think, outlook on life, and you kind of look the same too. I think that's okay to say. But we were talking pre-show and you were saying that you get mistaken for Shay.
Bro, okay, it's happened so much. Like, I had to say it beforehand because I didn't want you to think I was just bringing it up on here. This is how bad not bad, but I mean, this is how like often it is. One of my like closest mates, who I've known for, how long have I known that? 7, 8 years. I've known for 8 years, thought you were me. James Nokise, I'm gonna expose you right now, Jimmy. He was like, bro, I'm so proud of you. Like, congrats on the podcast. And I was kind of sitting there like, because I'm a people pleaser, bro. So like, as soon as someone starts going, I already feel like, okay, there's something off here, but I'll keep letting them going.
That's
So,
nice.
Yeah, I love what you're doing, and I think the podcast you just did recently was amazing, and I was like, okay, where's he going with this? What do you guys call it? You call it like it's like Between Two Ferns or something, but something different, eh?
That's amazing.
And I straight away was like, he thinks I'm the perfect Between Two Beers.
That's
He thinks I'm Seamus.
I'm humbled.
It's the third time this week.
Oh wow! I haven't got any Joe Daymond's out there. I don't think.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't. I just want to say there's a lot of people that are really proud for you, proud of you for your recent success, bro.
Thank you.
And there's a lot of people that are watching. Trust me, if anyone knows, I know. Man.
I've had a few pop up where it's been you, and I've is that Shay?
No, but it can't be because I don't do anything on social media.
Yeah, well, leaning into that.
Bro,
Yeah.
because I kind of get it like a lot. Random different people. Some people, to be honest, most are a stretch. It's usually just like a bigger, like brown dude.
Mm.
But then the more and more people have said I look like you. Honestly, I've watched some of your boys' episodes and I'm like, no, I do actually.
Yeah, I can see it. But I've never got 50 Cent.
Really?
Never.
Yeah, no, you don't.
Yeah,
you
you've
don't
got.
have that.
I can see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can see it too, which I hate.
Yeah.
Because people are like, you look like 50 Cent, and I'm like, I mean, I've only been told every single day of my life, probably since he came into
But
prominence.
that was like, I was thinking that and I made the note of that and I was like, no, I've never got that.
But I really think we could convince people that,
We could do
honestly, bro, I reckon we could convince people that we're brothers.
Yeah, that's fine.
For real.
What we should do is get you to be the co-host
I was
with
gonna
one guest and just see if anyone.
Switch seats. We'll switch seats mid. We'll switch shirts and switch seats mid episode and just see if anybody notices.
So I see you every day, right? Like you.
Yeah, no, I work with you.
So you're popping up on my social media algorithm. For our older audience that don't know how like the TikTok or the Instagram algorithms work, is the more you watch of something, the more it shows you. So like I'm watching your stuff right to the end, so it's like current, like it's always putting you up. And I want to try to explain the gags you do, which are my favorite ones for the audience. And this could be a train wreck, but it's the ones you do with the notes in the background, right? So like the one I've got the example of is you'll say, these are things I say when I want to talk shit about someone but don't know the other person's buzz. And then there'll be 3 things listed and you kind of like reveal them as you say it. So the first one will be like, Tony's all good, eh? And then you sort of talk about that one, and the next one it'll progressively get worse. You're like, Stacey, eh? What's your thoughts? And then the last one will be, what the fuck is up with Eric? But it's so good. And they always hit, and I always watch them right to the end. But you've done about 50 of them. So I kind of wanted to start there. Like, how do you come up with that? Like, are they just all fresh coming to you, on the daily?
Yeah, but I appreciate you watching because there are a shitload of them. But where I get most of my inspiration from, like comedically, is from conversations, is from talking to people. And one of the things that I guess I lean on is the fact that, because I tend to have interactions with people, but then I'll almost like think objectively of like, that was so weird. Why did I just do that? Like, that person just asked me if I watched a movie I've never watched, but I said I had watched it. Why did I just do that? And I start to like really think on a lot of these things. And then those tend to be, sort of the basis of like a lot of my ideas, because then I'll use social media as a means to like figure out, is this an isolated experience? Is this something that we all kind of share? And I think that's like the beauty of it for me, is that's how I kind of find out. So that's where it all really comes from.
But if you're having conversations with friends and then you're recycling that a couple of days later, are they going, was that what we spoke on Wednesday?
Things I say when someone's telling a shitty story. Like, oh, interesting.
You'll see it if you ever go through the comments. I can't say anymore, bro. I cannot. I've stitched myself up too, because I've put in things that I like say all the time. And so people start commenting, you said that to me. Like my actual mates start commenting, you've said this to me. And my audience have like tagged onto that. So they all just comment it all the time. Like people I've never met, they're like, you've literally said that to me. But it's like, and it's so funny because, when it comes to like creating content online, you put heaps of effort and planning into certain ones. And for me, like I do these like 60-second mockumentaries, which take like a bit of time. And, I even go buy costumes, like rent costumes. It's like a whole thing. And then it's so funny just how social media works, because, those ones that take a lot of time, they'll get like however much like traction. And then you just do these stupid ass ones in front of it, where I'm just sitting in front of like a green screen notes app, and they just really hit.
Yeah. Can you predict which ones are going to go big?
Bro, honestly, after 8 years, like you kind of don't really know it. Yeah. Like, how have you boys found with this podcast? Like, because I bet you have episodes where you're like, this is the one. This is where we become Joe Rogan.
The best example of it is we'll have a reel, we'll cut, and we'll think, fuck, this is a hot reel, and we'll put it out on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook. And it will do like millions of views on one platform and like hundreds on the other, the exact same reel.
It's so weird, eh? And then you'll have like, I call them like your Lucy's. You'll just chuck them out. And you'll be like, whatever, I'll just put this out. And then it goes off and you're like, I have no idea.
Well, they go off like months later. They resurface.
My content does that too.
Yeah.
Hey, because when you boys did your episode with Reggie, like, did you know in the moment that this is gonna...
I honestly didn't.
That episode was huge.
Yeah, I think we were both surprised by the response to it, and it wasn't until the feedback started coming in that we reflected on it. I was like, oh yeah, no, it is quite different for someone of his profile to be talking like that. But the teaser we made for it, when he's talking about doing meth and he's sort of thinking about shitting on the Warriors and all that sort of stuff, and it's like, well, that is a pretty captivating hook to go and listen to the episode.
It was crazy, and it was like I've been in podcasting for ages, and the numbers that you boys were doing like that's like American podcasts kind of numbers and like reach, and so to see that from you guys is like I understand as a podcaster like how crazy that is, and then I think you like executed it in so many different ways that I'm like that this shows this is how you actually podcast. I think at the moment, weirdly, podcasting is still quite new to New Zealand. People are still figuring it out. I think you boys killed it on that shit.
That's very, very kind.
And so many people told me. So many people told me I killed it on that.
That's very kind.
Cheers, Joe. And I've noticed you do this in interviews. You sort of turn it around. We're going to keep it up. We're going to keep
nice
it
try. Nice try.
But I did want to talk about that because you've got West Park Production, which is your company, and you're sort of positioning yourself as the cutting edge of the ever-changing landscape and sort of like knowing how to frame things and how to do videos for people. The place I wanted to start was I Show Speed coming to New Zealand, because I think for our audience and even for Shay, like
I had to explain like I was a 10-year-old just before.
I've only just realised like what that streaming is and how huge it is and how genius what he's doing is. And then I saw that you did a video on it, which came from a bit of a different angle about the tall poppy thing. But can you talk to us about streamers, like how big that scene is and if it's coming to New Zealand?
Bro, I think it's like the coolest thing ever because, you know, one of the things that I think like makes social media difficult is it's always been like this kind of one-sided, you know, they talk of parasocial relationship because typically you're building a connection with the creator, but the creator isn't really building a connection with you. And I think that's what streaming is like really broken the ground on. It's still in its early days, but I reckon that's like as much of a relationship someone can build directly with their community in a two-way, you know, sort of way that you can kind of have. And that's sort of what streaming has broken the ground of. For anybody that doesn't really get it, it's basically you just sit in front of a camera and a camera streams live to like an audience. And one of the coolest things about it is, you know, they can give you real-time feedback. And the crazy thing with Twitch is that I think from my understanding, you have to pay in order for them to see that. So the money that these guys are making is crazy.
This is the part that I had to try and get explained to me last night by somebody, and it still didn't make sense to me.
It's crazy.
So for your that live, you've got to pay. It's like OnlyFans, but for content.
Basically,
Well, that's what OnlyFans is.
I'm
I'm going to slow down and I'm going to walk back. I'm going to walk this back.
What
and
else
I'm
could
gonna
OnlyFans be for?
I'm going to sit quietly
I'm
here.
just unsure. I really
I don't know.
wanna
I know exactly what OnlyFans is for, but
Me too.
yeah,
To make sense of this, I need to put it in an OnlyFans context.
Nah, you know, repurpose it for a context you understand. That. That's what I mean.
yeah.
I feel that.
So that would be the PP, like the PPVs, but as they're going live.
Pretty much. So it's that's actually a really good way to describe it. Like similar to like PPVs like in boxing. You're basically just paying, but in this you're not paying to view the content. And I think this is the beauty of streaming. You're not paying to view the content. You're paying to interact with the creator because that is the real like value. And I think that's where social media is going to leave TV in the dust. Is TV and traditional media comes from a landscape where like the content is what's the word? Like that's where the value comes from. That's the value proposition, is the access to the content. Where social media understands you can't put any barrier in the way of that. You got to make that the like free flow, let as many people in as possible. And the value proposition is your connection to the creator. And streaming has shown that people will pay stupid amounts of money. A lot of people understand that in the OnlyFans content, but like that context. But streaming has shown that like you can do that in so many other ways as well. And I think that's like the sickest thing about streaming.
Yeah, and the OnlyFans is a good way for me to understand it because I don't understand why somebody reading my stuff, why I would get a buzz out of that.
Yeah.
Whereas I can understand why we get a buzz out of OnlyFans because it's when it's behind a paywall.
And it's you almost are building like what that does is it makes the audience feel like they're part of the content. And
that's POV normally.
Yeah. And it does do that. Like, but like, you know what's crack up is I've never thought of that as like an analogy for it, but that it literally is. That's why it's more valuable, is because like, again, that value proposition is the creator. But I think that's what, you know, linear and traditional media is really struggling to understand, is that like the creator is what's valuable now. And they're still in a space where they're like, no, it's the content. Like, we're going to put it all in the content. And it's like, people don't give a shit about the content. If they like the person, they'll watch whatever the fuck they make.
What struck me about the iShow Speed coming to New Zealand was the genius of it. So he comes and he does like a 4-hour stream, right? And he's fighting Dan Hooker and he's training with the Warriors and he's at the Mowbray's place with Auckland FC. And it's space of 4 hours. It's high energy, high octane. He's connecting with all of the biggest people in that city. And then he does that in every country around the world and he's got millions of people watching, huge crowds. I was like, holy shit, this is different.
It's genius, bro. And what it is it's creating. So there's this thing that they kind of talk about, you know, when you're streaming, and actually they talk about it on social media. When any company's kind of talking about social media in like a real basic way, they'll say to you, you know, if you're trying to grow your social media audience, engage with your fans, you know, reply to comments, share stories, all that sort of stuff. he's basically bringing that into real time, because at the end of the day, all fans want is acknowledgement. And like, it's basically like a feedback loop that when you complete it, you not only complete it for that person, but you show every other person that that's something that you're going to continue to do. And if you put like a transaction in the middle of that, then it's so organic. It doesn't even feel like you're really paying for anything. Because at the end of the day, you're just asking for a connection. The genius with what Speed does is he brings that opportunity directly to the people. And it can be something as simple as like, as every brand that I saw that he shouted out used his content. So like, even he said mustache cookies, like, what the fuck is that? And that 3 seconds, mustache cookies chucked that up on their thing. And I saw they had like 30 comments.
Yeah.
And like, that's great for them, but that's great for Speed.
Yeah.
And so it just, you know, he creates this entire kind of ecosystem around, for him, it's really just one thing that he has to do, which is stream. And then that leads onto all these different channels. And I think people don't realize like that's why these guys are reaching not only stupid amounts of fame, but like building these amazing, amazing businesses. We don't really know the longevity of them, but who gives a shit? Because at least for where they're at in this point in time, we've never seen anything like that. And we've never seen anyone have that much influence and control over all their value chain.
Yeah. And then it's that repurposing of that 4 hours into like little snackable clips that just live on for eternity as well.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And I think like when I talk to like older people, I think they understand when you start to talk about how it works as a business. Like, because I think they get stuck on like, why would people pay for that shit?
Man, I think there will be a lot of people listening that the way you have explained it, they will get it. And it's just been something that they thought kids did and they weren't really sure. Like, this has been valuable. You've been educating New Zealand. Okay, I'm going to move on. We've got a few stories. So we have been casting the net quite wide, and we've talked to some of your friends and family. And there's a few yarns we want you to tell before we sort of like work into your story. So, yeah, I'm not sure where this is going to go, but did you stop a robbery in Auckland once?
Oh my God, this is so funny. I can't think as to who. Yeah. So, yeah, boys. Yeah.
Take us to the scene of the crime.
Yeah, I stopped the robbery. Okay, so I was with my bro Seru. Shout out Seru. He goes by the name Noi. Great musician. Love you, brother. And we're just chilling at like my old West Park office on Common Street. And bro, have you guys hung out much in like central like Auckland, like city? Like down there, Queen Street?
Yeah, not between 9 a.m. and 3 a.m.
Yeah, don't. Yeah, don't. After 3 a.m., interesting shit.
White lady.
Yeah. Oh, the place or?
Burger.
So, to be honest, I love Auckland, but yo, down there is an absolute shit show. It is crazy. The craziest shit is happening down there, and I think people really won't believe. And I mean that in a serious way, but also in crack up ways too. This one is maybe half and half. So me and my bro were walking to go get lunch, and this girl like comes like running up to us. She like ran out of the store and runs up to us, and she's bawling her eyes out, and she's like, "Hey, did you just see that guy?" And we're like, "What?" Because I like at this point I'm seeing places like people doing crazy shit, like, you know, I don't really know how much you realize. I saw a dude get stabbed outside my office.
Whoa.
Like, it is wild down there. So this girl running up to me, like, crying is not, like, near the top of, like, the craziest stuff you see down there, Queen Street. So she runs up to me in Seru, and she's like, this guy just robbed my store. He, like, punched me over and like, stole a bunch of our stuff. And I have this thing where I'll explain it more in a sec. Basically, I have this like weird thing where like I just kind of don't think. So I straight away go to her like, "Oh, where is he?" And she goes, "That's him over there with the red backpack." And I just look at Seru and just start sprinting. And so we sprint after this guy, and I catch him because I'm actually quite fast, boys.
Because why wouldn't I?
Yeah. You know, spoiler alert. I catch him, and Seru at this point, I think he didn't really know like what I was up to, but I grabbed him, wrestled him to the ground, and just like start kicking the shit out of him. And then the funniest part is people start like filming like me and him like kicking the shit out of this guy. And then, because this was only like a couple years ago, like, you know,
you were a name.
People,
people like,
is
that Joe Daymond beating the shit out of him?
So the funniest part of it is because I saw people filming, I started just shouting, like, just so people had context, but like directed it at him. Why did you rob that store? And I'm like looking at him just so people know. So I'm like, why did you rob that store? Just like kicking him, and I'm just like, okay, we're sweet, bro. Grabbed it. We grabbed the shit off him because he like chucked it all in this bag. And like got it all out, and then we walked back to like where the girl was, and then she's like bawling her eyes out. She's talking to security, and she's like, "Did you find them?" And then I was like, "Oh yeah, I got the stuff." And she's like, "Wait, what?" I was like, "Yeah, I got it. Here you go." Just gave it to her, and then me and him walked off.
Just the hero. Eh?
And yeah, that was.
Have you seen any of that footage resurface anytime?
You know what's funny is I actually haven't, and
people are waiting.
If anyone has that footage of Seamus beating up a dude on Queen Street 2 years ago, send that through.
I've realised with the second story we're asking you to tell, it also involves fighting. And
it's so funny because these are like the 2 fights I've gotten in my life, and you're gonna ask me about them.
So we'll take us to the second one. If you've got a fair idea of where this is, Thailand. I'm going to position you in Thailand in a bar with a group of German men that don't speak English.
That is crazy that you boys like even, because I can't even remember where I've ever told this story for you guys to even like know the story. But if I don't say so myself, it's quite a funny story. So I was traveling. I did like a massive like backpack around like Europe and Asia when I was about 20. I think I was 19, turning 20, and I was in Thailand for the full moon party. Have you boys been to Thailand?
nah.
No.
Damn, man. Talk about rainbows in for adults.
I haven't been lucky enough to have my first orgy.
That's a deep cut. And because that night was anything but deep. Especially when I'm involved. But anyways, I can't remember where I've told these stories. This is insane. So I'm like at the full moon party in Koh Phangan, which is, like this island in Thailand. And it's crack up. It's just basically just fill a whole beach, have a little festival on there, and it's just like I can't even begin to describe it. And I start like kind of dancing. I'm with a bunch of these like German dudes who they don't really speak English, but they're all like weirdly they're a group of mates that like build skateboard parks, so they only really like knew English words like associated with skateboarding. And I've never skateboarded in my life, but obviously I needed mates, so. That night, I'm a professional skateboarder from New Zealand.
It's good. It's really good.
So we're going around, like just dancing around, and there's this group of girls dancing, and we just start like dancing with them. Nothing, like literally just not completely harmless, just dancing. And I like start looking at one of the girls, and I was like, oh wow, she's pretty mean. And I was like, oh damn, she's from Geordie Shore. But I did the Kiwi thing of like, as soon as you recognize someone, you just start like looking everywhere but them. So I was like, oh. But I've never heard of Geordie Shore ever in my life. Just start like saying that real loud. Just got to throw them off the scent. Yeah. And we're just dancing around. And then all of a sudden, this like dude just jumps out and like wrestles me, like grabs me behind the head, like puts me in a headlock. And then, as you've heard of, got quite a quick switch to crime.
Quite good at fighting.
Yeah. So I like grab him, like start like throwing in a few. All my German mates just start going ham. I don't know if you've ever partied with Germans, but those dudes are crazy. I'm pretty sure they just started like hitting up randoms that weren't even part of it. But it turns into this full on thing. And then as we're all like wrestling, me and this dude, we're kind of actually not really fighting. And to be honest, I hardly threw a punch. We're just kind of wrestling, we're definitely putting it on. We know there's a lot of like people around. So we're just kind of wrestling with each other and stuff. And like, as like we've got each other, I'm like looking around and I just see all these like lights flashing on us. And I look around and I'm like, oh shit, cameras. the news must be here. And then I look at the dude, and it's the dude Aaron from the Geordie Shore, and they're filming the show.
Amazing.
Here in Thailand. And I realized we're just throwing ourselves right in the middle of it. And the funniest thing is I've tried to find the footage, and there's like everything pretty much around that. Obviously except that, because that one was actually like pretty crazy. But the funniest thing, I probably shouldn't say this is the funniest thing, but it was pretty crack up.
One of the things
was these German dudes just absolutely going ham on like everyone around. And I'm pretty sure they had no idea what was happening.
It's like Roadhouse. That bar fight in Roadhouse.
Straight up. It was like that. It was, yeah. It was, but yeah, that's how basically I got in a fight with a bunch of the dudes from
You need
Geordie
to get
Shore.
that footage, Put those two clips together,
Bruh,
repackage you as
it's there somewhere. I remember seeing everything like before it, and then, but then I didn't. I remember not being able to know like how do I even find like the stuff afterwards. But yeah, that was crack up, man.
So we've painted quite an interesting picture of Joe Daymond. Maybe we should.
That is not who Joe is.
Maybe set the scene a little bit differently. Maybe just take a sharp 180 out of there.
But those are two such like niche stories that I don't usually tell, because obviously they're like they do paint a very inaccurate picture.
Let me be clear. That is not a representation of Joe.
Let's bring the plane back up.
This is, okay, I've written a few parts to sort of tell your story for you. Okay.
Dang.
So you started stand-up comedy in 2017. Then the next year, at the age of 22, you were homeless and living out of your car for 3 months. While homeless, you started writing a series loosely based off your experiences as a young man trying to find himself in Auckland. You filmed the pilot with zero budget, and the clips of that kickstarted your journey creating social media comedy content. After 2 years and over 10 million views online, in 2020, you embarked on the largest independent comedy tour in New Zealand, which saw over 10,000 tickets sold, including 2 nights at Auckland Sky City Theatre, where at the age of 24, you became the youngest person to sell it out, as well as the fastest, with the first show selling out in 10 minutes. Since then, you have written and appeared in a number of mainstream television shows, including Bouncers, which was picked up by Comedy Central, in which you were showrunner, writer, director, and starred in it. You're now one of New Zealand's biggest, best, and in our opinion, funniest content creators.
Damn, bro. That really means a lot, man, honestly. Yeah.
Accurate? Did we leave anything out?
I also have a 6-pack. It's in the car, go grab it. But
Fantastic lover.
no, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, thanks so much for that. That's such a. It sounds crazy when you hear that back. Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of wanted just to set the scene, because I do want to dig into the foundations, and we want to sort of bring it back to that point when you start comedy. But beforehand, can you take us to childhood? Because one of the most interesting things that jumped out at me was that you'd been to 12 schools by the time you started high school. So I'm wondering like how those foundational years kind of shaped you and what your childhood was like.
Yeah, it was. Damn, that's not really something I ever get asked about. But you know, I think it does a really good job of teaching you how to kind of adapt to new environments, which, you know, is a strength that I'm really grateful for, because it's basically like made my entire career and like my whole life being able to do that. But then, you know, I guess this journey that I've been on like, as I've grown, is what makes that difficult, is because when you're constantly, you know, having to adapt to new, and you have no real like foundation or structure in your life, you kind of don't really have any leg to stand on, like even just within yourself and like who you are, let alone as kind of a family, you know, if we're to talk of like the wider implications of like me and my family as well. So it's weird. It's something that I think I struggled with, honestly, my entire life, until I was able to then turn it into something that has been like, if anything, the greatest like blessing to it. So that's kind of how I, sort of look at it.
And I think to put further context on it, so you lived as an expat family overseas for a large part of it. I think 5 years you're based overseas in Southeast Asia through Malaysia and India, which is and a stable family unit. So mum and dad married, working overseas. So it's not like there was. Yes, there's 12 schools, but it's not like there's like turmoil and you're being shifted from family to family. You've got your family unit, but you are part of this traveling experience as a family.
Yeah, and to be honest, we were like so solid, I reckon, through it's definitely been a bit of a roller coaster, and I reckon we were pretty solid until in India. And I've actually never really talked about this on a podcast, only because people don't even really know this part about me, let alone ask about it. So I appreciate the fact that you boys even bring this up. Where my life kind of took a turn, I reckon, was in India, and it was the reason we ended up moving back to New Zealand was because my dad almost died in India. He got real sick, and basically he had a heart attack. And then in India, and it's crazy, my old GP in New Zealand, he was a doctor also in India, and he knew about the procedure that would have happened to my dad. And he said people die from it all the time. And basically they inject you with this stuff if you have a heart attack in India. And it's weirdly quite lethal. And so my dad almost died from that. So my mum ended up moving my brother and I back to New Zealand. She stayed in India with my dad. And that was kind of the beginning of what ended up being quite a tumultuous time, I reckon, in my life, sort of onwards. And I reckon it really rocked my parents, as that experience would. And that brought us back to New Zealand. And I think, it kind of changed a lot of things for us. Because up until then, we were really solid and together because, we're a family traveling overseas together. And this was my parents' first time overseas. And that them having to come back because of those circumstances really changed a lot. Yeah.
I mean, it's not only a traumatic time for your parents, it's a traumatic time as a young person finding their way in the world in a foreign country, which is a hell of a foreign country to be in the first place in terms of the exposure that you get to all sorts of crazy stuff. I imagine your eyes have seen some... My adult eyes saw some wild stuff in India.
I was going to say, have you guys been to India?
I've been to Mumbai for a week.
Bro, how'd you find it?
Just things like seeing a cow's carcass.
It's crazy,
hanging on the street, and dudes walking with a bucket to go and take a shit and having a chat like the three of us are whilst shitting. It's
so real.
It's an assault. It's an assault to the senses. I mean, I like watching a guy shit like anybody else does, but usually in the sanctity of some sort of a closed space behind a paywall.
You're funny, bro. I was waiting for my turn again, and you already. I appreciate that, Shay.
But it's crazy, man. It's a lot.
I always give people the advice that if you really want your worldview rocked, go to India, because I think our understanding of society often we forget comes from a very Western view. The way they run it is, it's crazy, and I'm definitely not the person to unpack that, but I definitely just invite people to if you ever get the opportunity to experience it, do so, because it's the crazy. It's unbelievable that people have to live a lot of the way that people live there. It's crazy.
And expat lifestyle is an interesting one as well, because you're exposed to all sorts of different families. So I've got a note in here about an interaction with a billionaire. Your dad had a friend that's a billionaire, and it almost impressed on you at a young age importance of relationships or managing relationships.
Yeah. So it's real weird because expatriate living is another thing that it was such a privilege, and I'm so honored that, I even got the chance to. And I think often you hear in New Zealand, people talk about this idea of I want to go traveling before I have kids, which is such a foreign idea to, I guess, me and how I grew up, because, that whole concept is, no, you travel with your family. You do this whole idea that we talk about in New Zealand of finding yourself and being free. You do that when you have kids. And my parents were very much subscribed to the New Zealand way of living until they did that. Because my dad, even though that went against his sensibilities and his idea of living, for him it was a once in a lifetime opportunity. And here's a moldy dude that grew up poor. He's fuck it, let's just give it a go. So I think that's the craziest thing with that. But then what I think the coolest thing about expat living is people come from all walks of life. My parents are very middle class, normal middle of the road in New Zealand. And when you're an expat, you basically just interact with everybody that's not from there. And you've got people that are there and they don't get they're not getting paid a whole lot of money there for the experience. And then you get people who have these massive businesses. And one of my best mates, his dad was there, which is how I have that interaction. And I'm weirdly real close with them, which is why it feels weird to even refer to him as that. But the biggest privilege it gave me was like the privilege of access to like information and actually be able to see like how people in certain positions actually do operate. Because it's one thing to read it through a book or see it in a documentary or be told how they operate, to then be able to actually see it firsthand. So yeah, that was, if that left any impact on me, I reckon it was that.
So bring us to New Zealand, Scots College. You'd been described by one of your friends as nerdy. Like, were you? I imagine you're the sort of the class clown, the jokester at school. But what were you like as a student?
That's so funny. Like exactly that. I was real quiet, and honestly, in ways like I still am. But I was very just. I've always been outgoing. Like if you have a conversation with me, but I've always like kind of kept to myself. And school was very much that for me. I was very quiet, like reserved. Just kept my head down, did my thing. Especially when you're in an environment like that where, you know, it's a private school setting and, you know, I'm kind of on there on circumstances where I don't really feel like, you know, on the same plane as everyone else there. You don't really like have the confidence to be like...
How many brown kids?
Bro, honestly, like 10. And one of the other ones was Stephen Adams.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you mates?
I mean... Just because you asked, Stevie. Yes.
we're boys.
Yeah, I mean, no, we were pretty good mates, like, to be honest, which, you know, always feels crack up saying, but yeah, no, we were pretty close.
We got to lose that New Zealand thing about us, eh?
We do.
He's like, yeah, we were friends.
Yeah.
We went to school together and we're friends, and I'm also friends with Israel Adesanya, and he's the best UFC fighter in the world. And it's because I'm a fucking good person.
Appreciate you saying that shit.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, grow up with Steve there.
Yeah. Can we dig on that? They're like one of 10 coloured kids at school.
Yeah.
Like, how did that shape you or affect you? Or how do you reflect on it?
Bro, honestly, it's quite embarrassing, to be honest. I reckon it's a time that I sort of look back at and you're a bit embarrassed because, you know, sort of like any person in any environment, regardless of race, where, you know, you kind of feel like you stick out. What do? You adapt or you die, kind of. So for me, it was having to kind of dull a lot of my cultural identity, as you would, dull a lot of my, you know, my actual identity. And that's why I think for me, like, Scots was kind of 5 years where I just sort of kept quiet and didn't really do a lot outside of just what I was told, you know. Did as many activities as I could, but pretty much kept to myself, which is why one thing I always say to people is I always say, you know, someone actually grew up with me when they describe me as quiet. It's the people that say that they thought I was going to be a comedian that, you know, are lying. Because, yeah, back then, like, I didn't really say a whole lot, do a whole lot, unless you knew me. But if you knew me, like, I spoke in the exact same way I do now, you know, I was always like a really big, like, I always loved the idea of aspiration and aspiring to be something. And so I think that was something that like really drove me internally. So even though I guess I was in like a lot of sort of strife through my younger years and really struggled, I always loved this idea of, but look at the possibilities in life and in this world. I reckon that's like the greatest thing about life. So that's kind of what carried me through a lot of it.
I'm mindful of not turning this into a one-on-one comparison of life and upbringings, but I'm really interested because I've thought this as well. When you say, oh, it's embarrassing to admit, but the embarrassment I think is on the people that you were interacting with. Like I know that's, but to flip it around, it's like, why was I embarrassed to not be who I am? Why did I don't know what I'm trying.
I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying.
Because there's a lot of us that are like that have come from backgrounds that maybe you wouldn't expect people, Pacific Island people particularly, or brown people to come from, that have come from this middle class, no challenge in your background, quite normal upbringing, but then to like feel like you've got to force it down to fit into an environment versus just like being yourself.
Yeah, pretty much, because, you know, I think it's sort of like anywhere, you know, and again, race aside, I think people walk into environments all the time where they feel like they need to validate like their existence within it. And, you know, I think Pākehā people will understand it just as much through like a work context, you know, like maybe there's a meeting with people more experienced, you're going to feel like an outsider if you look at yourself as not having that experience. It's the same thing when it comes to the conversation of race. And I think that, like, that's one thing that I try and frame it as, where I say, well, imagine that struggle that you have and how hard that is, and your imposter syndrome that you would feel from like an experience standpoint around like your skills and stuff. Add a whole nother thing, and that being your identity, and then take away the fact that you can control it. Like, you can't. There's nothing you can prove to people that feel a certain way about it. There's nothing you can change about a lot of people's. And what that does is it like what it did for me is it doesn't make you this like super empowered, like, oh, I'm going to stand on my 2 feet individual. If anything, in the very human experience of wanting acceptance, you're constantly figuring out like, but I really want to be in this space. Like, I respect the people in it. I appreciate what they do. How do I become the person that's accepted in that? Because I don't feel like that right now. And I think that's actually the ultimate challenge of like what we kind of talk about. And I guess I always try and talk about it in a way of like, you may not understand the experience I talk about, but I bet you know this feeling. And that's like how I always try and frame it.
I want to move you through, and the only reason I'm moving through this space is because I've got so much to talk about. But I want to link up to sort of when you were homeless and in the car, because from this sort of stable family unit, you know, your parents are in IT, like what's going on in your life at that point that you end up there?
Well, it's a hard one, because I think for me, I reckon I'm a really good example of like falling through, for lack of a better word, like falling through the cracks. Because, you know, I'll address like kind of my personal circumstances first, and then like the kind of the wider like family ones, you know, I'm pretty open about. So at least for me personally, you know, I had moved out of my flat, and that's kind of where I was sort of stuck, and couldn't really afford to like live anywhere, and was really trying hard to get work, but where I was really struggling with. And the only reason I'm talking about this is because I reckon this is like real relatable and where a lot of people are falling at the moment. I would try and go for like laboring jobs that, you know, is this going to be my career and my passion? Like, no, but I need a job. So I would try to go for any kind of job like that. And where they would strike me down on is they would see, because on my CV, like a lot of the skills that I guess I'd try to paint for like to seem good enough for the job was a lot of like entrepreneurial sort of stuff that I'd done through the years. And I added like my employment stuff too. But they often would hit me back and be like, well, we can tell you're going to leave this when you find a new job. And I'd be like, nah, like I need this shit right now. Like, can you please just, like, I'm really desperate for something. And I just couldn't get anything, because they'd look at my experience, they'd look at the way I spoke, and how even that goes against, I guess, their idea of someone that should be in this job, which again, I'd be like, well, who the fuck are you to say who would and wouldn't be in this job, who should and shouldn't have this work? Like, I need this shit. But I often like always got pushed back on that. But then on the other end, I would also try and like reach, you know, for other areas where maybe I didn't have the experience on, like, in a traditional sense, but I had built it in ways that I could show because of all the things I'd done. And there they would just say, nah, like you haven't gone to uni, or you haven't like worked at this kind of place, like you also can't do this shit. And it would be like the most basic, like, sorry, my bad, like not basic, but it'd be like an admin. And they're kind of telling me, oh, you don't have any experience that says you can work on Excel spreadsheets. And I'm like, I can show you, like. So I was just in this position where I couldn't get anything. You know, I'm a young brown dude, and really struggling with sort of figuring out how the hell I even get something as basic as a job. Couldn't get on the dole because I didn't have a permanent address, because at the time, like, me and my parents were kind of in a tough spot. So I was just kind of fucked, eh? But I was locked into what I wanted to do, which was comedy. And at the very least, I was like, well, I know what I want to do there. I'll just kind of take all things on myself, and at the very least, I feel like something will pop up that, you know, allows me to kind of get back on my feet. Which is why, yeah, it sounds sad, and it was hard, don't get me wrong. But again, for me, I was so tapped into, but this will be an unreal story. Like, where could this take me from here? Like, I was thinking 5-10 years ahead of, okay, this is kind of shit now, but I know exactly what I want to do. And that's going to be kind of my North Star that I follow. And it's been a funny pattern that I've picked up in all the really hard points of my life. That's been my thing that I like really, really lean on. I try not to tell people do this because it's a very me thing that it worked for. But I reckon that's the thing that like saved my ass in so many situations. And that's why I love like feeling inspired and I love like looking up to people. And that's why I watch podcasts obsessively, because like I love people's stories. Because at the very least, I feel like every single person I've ever like interacted with always has something where I'm like, fuck, that's mean. Like, how good. That's something that I really tap into when I'm in those moments. And that's what I think about when I think of like back then.
I love that outlook. And you're not over dramatized. You know, you're very real about what it was, right? You're living in your car, you were working at the library, you were showering at the gym, and you were just in the hustle period because you kind of had this vision and drive, and that you knew one day, like on a podcast like this, you can talk about it and people can relate, that people will be in that position and thinking, you know what, fuck, sometimes you just got to fucking do it.
Oh,
back
bro.
yourself.
And that's why, I get, that's why, to be honest, like, I've done like a bunch of podcasts at this point, but I still feel so, grateful every single time. Because to me, I'm like, it's crazy that I'm even ever at a point where people even want to talk to me, let alone like want to talk to me about like my life. Because at one point, it was just me really, and I was just figuring it out. And even that alone was like a crazy idea. Like, there's a crazy possibility. So for me, like, I'll always be grateful for that. Even sort of 5 years in now where, it's happened a lot, it's still, to me, I still pinch myself basically in these moments. So, yeah.
Sorry, Steve. Where did that clarity of thought come from about that is my North Star and that's what I want to gravitate towards so I can put myself through the shit to get there? Like, what does that look like, or what does that feel like? How does that happen?
That's such a good question, man. I reckon... I reckon it honestly started young. Like, I was a massive reader when I was younger and was obsessed with reading. Like, my favorite books growing up were Hardy Boys. I read them religiously, and Series of Unfortunate Events. And I guess the theme along both of those, I like really obsessed. Harry Potter as well. The theme along all those, and something I still love today and something that I really want to end up in some way, is mystery. But then the like essential element in mystery and any character within it is like curiosity. So I loved the whole idea of like finding stuff out and that like pushing you forward. So for me, because that became like, weirdly a passion of mine from such a young age, that's why I loved documentaries. I love podcasts. I just love like learning stuff, and I love learning stuff about people, which is why I guess like sometimes podcasts find it hard when they talk to me because they're trying to ask about me, and I'm like, nah, fuck, I want to hear about you, bro. Like, how did this all happen? Like, what's happening here? Because it's a genuine, passion of mine, that like curiosity and finding stuff out. And then never would I have known that was the thing that kept me afloat, that kept my eyes up, that kept my hopes up, and that like drove me forward. And to this day, still does, really.
So link us up to the COVID blow up. But before that, like, like anyone that starts stand-up comedy, you're nervous. I think you're calling sick for your first gig, but you get there and you find your feet. But like, how does that link into sort of lockdown, and what was the thought process?
Yeah, so, I mean, I didn't have, and that's so crazy that you guys know this stuff. I honestly really appreciate it. I think the biggest thing for me was I actively went into lockdown, and I looked at it like, okay, we're all going to be... It's funny. I've done myself a disservice at times because I think I've tried to play it off when people have asked me. It's like, oh, yeah, I just got lucky and I just kind of mucked around. But nah, as soon as I found out we're going to be locked in at home, I knew straight away, okay, what is everyone going to be doing? Sitting on their phones all day. Okay, I'm going to make a video every single day that we're locked down. And I had the specific goal of, I was at like 7,500, 8,000 Instagram followers. And my thing was like, okay, at the end of the 28 days, I'm going to have 10,000. And that was my goal. And then I think I hit 10,000 in like the first 2 days. And then I came out of lockdown at like 35,000. And my life had like completely changed forever. But yeah, I think I want to make the point of that is I was doing myself the disservice of painting that as like a luck thing, which obviously it was. And I'm grateful for that part of it that I didn't control. But I went into it with all the intention of, okay, this is actually a moment where I feel like I could change my life. And I'm going to like try to. And it's just crazy. I still look back and I'm like, I can't believe I did. It's crazy.
I love that because a line that I've used a lot recently is like, it's by accident rather than by design. And I've flipped it now to being like, maybe that's how we started. But what we do now in terms of the podcast and how we've expanded and the areas we're looking to move, it's very much by design.
100%.
It's like seeing opportunities, assessing them and going, no, let's be deliberate about that and let's do it that way. Yeah. So I love that you're able to acknowledge that. Because people talk about the overnight success, but it's like, well, what about the fucking 10 years that I was working beforehand to get myself into the moment to then capitalize on that?
And I know you boys probably don't want to talk about this within yourselves, but that's why like I even love the idea that you recently celebrated like your 5 years. But then you would say, Stevie, that like probably it's been this last year that's like been the one that's 100%. Kind of... And I love that whole thing, and I really love that whole message of, look, people really don't understand how long it takes to do things and how long it takes for like something to really start to reward you. But it's weirdly, when you look back, it's like, yeah, that was long, but then it actually didn't feel that long at all. And
because you've got that drive, like when you're doing these lockdown videos, you've got the drive to do it. One a day is discipline, but you're also enjoying the creative output, right? And you're getting the feedback and people are cracking up and like this thing is building and it's work, but it doesn't really feel like work. And you can see where it's potentially leading to. Yeah,
for sure. Which I think is why I never try and frame the actual like doing of a lot of the comedy I do on like social and live as the hard part. It's the stuff around it that's the grind. But that part of it, bro, it's the most like rewarding, fulfilling thing because you're literally like coming up with ideas that make you crack up. Yeah. And you're like, okay,
is this gonna make
I'm gonna see everyone else cracks up. And then when they do, you're like,
I knew it.
Yeah. and it weirdly like it gives you this thing where, and this is what I love about social media, especially when you're at the point I'm at where like I'm so lucky to have an audience that's like followed me for so long. And you get to the point where you feel like you're in on this inside joke, but just with a massive group of people. Even the stuff I was just, saying before about how my audience has an inside joke with my green screen things where they say, oh, you've said that to me. And it's people I've never met. But like, that's the inside joke we have. Yeah. How crazy you can have that with complete strangers. And that is more fulfilling than any opportunity or any kind of, reaction to like a piece of content can give you. Just that connection. It's so critical, man.
So after everyone's allowed to go out after lockdown. You're still quite sort of raw as a stand-up from what I understand, but you decide to do a live show around New Zealand and you sell, is it 10,000 tickets in 20 minutes?
Yeah, something like that. It was crazy. And I'm not, doing the classic like Kiwi putting myself down. I was proper dog shit at stand-up. I was so bad, bro. Like... People don't know that I did this like massive tour and a lot of people like call back to it because it is something I'm super proud of. And bro, some of those shows were like, I'm so glad no one filmed them because they were horrible. I'll tell you guys one thing that I've never really told anyone on the podcast. One of my bros, Will Slingsby, shout out Willie. He's an amazing like documentary like filmmaker. He's doing one with Navajo Sterling at the moment. He's the man. I think you know where I'm going with this show. He did a whole thing around me like doing Sky City, right? And he followed me around for like 2-3 days, bro. The documentary's unreal. He edited it. It looks beautiful. The shows were so bad, bro, that we didn't put it out. I was so bad at stand-up, bro, that we have this amazing piece of content and we both were just like, we can't put this out, bro.
Are you going for it?
Yeah, one of our sources had suggested. So like Sky City, what is it like? 700 people.
Yeah.
And you sell it out,
Yeah.
right? Like a huge thing to do as a 24-year-old. And did you tell a joke at the start that was it a Madeleine McCann joke that you used at the start?
Oh, you guys have got...
And then people have walked out
Yeah,
to
bro.
this biggest gig of your life.
Yeah, but...
Can you tell us, do you remember the joke?
Oh, my God.
I mean, 700 people have heard the joke before.
That is a deep cut that you guys have brought this up. This is so embarrassing. The joke... Okay, I'm going to explain the joke before I tell the joke. Okay. So the joke is essentially on the idea of like... Because at the time, the Madeleine McCann documentary had come out. And that was back when Netflix...
Context is really important.
Yeah.
Just, I want to be clear on that.
I just need to make sure because, I'm keen to do Dancing with the Stars. So, like, the Madeleine McCann documentary come out, and that was when, like, Netflix were giving out, like, $200 million. Like, you heard of, like, these stupid-ass deals that they were giving out, like, $200 million to whoever to make this and whatever. So, it was going off of that idea at the time that, like, how much money have Madeleine McCann's like family made off of her disappearance. And so the joke I tell was like, I start out, to be honest, I would tell the joke differently, but I still stand by that it's a funny joke. But I used to start off the joke as like, has anyone seen the Madeleine McCann documentary? Has anyone seen her? And I go, oh no, just obviously just joking. We haven't heard from her in fucking ages. Something so dumb like that. And like, I'd never told the joke in that way before the show, and people just were not feeling it, eh? And, and it was the first joke I came out and told. And where I get to in the joke is they made so much money off Maddie's disappearance. Like, I've looked at my nephew sometimes and thought about leaving the door open.
You just see people head for the
yeah,
exits.
and people were just like heading the exit, and it's one joke I look back and I'm like, I definitely wouldn't do it now, but I can see where my head was at then,
Where is 24? Like doing this tour, like it's an ambitious thing. Are you full of like you're saying you weren't very good and it was a shit show or whatever. I don't know if you said shit show, but
no, it was
but
a shit show and a shit show.
Are you confident enough? Like, what's it like? You've got this community and they bought 10,000 tickets in 20 minutes. Like, how are you feeling inside your head going around doing it?
Nah, bro. Like, I went into it knowing, and to be honest, that was probably like what doomed me from the start with it was I was going into it knowing I wasn't ready. But for me, also, I went into it. I honestly went on tour knowing I was going to bomb at pretty much every show. And I basically did, to be completely honest. I think the only shows that went well were like my Wellington ones. And that was just because like all my family and shit were there. And to be honest, even they like couldn't really look me in the eyes. So, but the shows I knew were going to be horrible, and they were. Like my performance of them were. But I knew, you know what? I'm probably not going to have another chance to capitalize off this moment again. And I know like the shelf life of the career that I'm in. I'm not so arrogant to think that this is going to be like this forever. So I've got to take advantage of this now and almost kind of kill my ego. As much as I want to feel like the man, I've got to just face it and who I am right now and hope that people at least see what I want to do and like invest in the journey. And that's the scariest thing, man, because you've built up, I guess, this it's going to sound strange, but you've built up this relationship with your audience. You don't want to disappoint them. And especially in something like this, this is their first instance like seeing you in this. You really don't want to disappoint them. And I think for me, it was something I was real embarrassed about and real ashamed about for ages. But it was me, I guess, more so trying to say, hey, look, I suck at this right now. And I'm going to show that publicly in a lot of instances where a lot of people say, like, no, keep it to yourself while you develop. But I'm going to just commit to doing this journey like in front of people that, at the very least have shown an interest that they want to see it. And that's a really, really hard thing, I guess, sort of to face because it's so embarrassing and, you're hearing... people are telling you to your face like how shit ass you are. So, but I think for me, it was something that I kind of owed almost to myself because of the whole reason I went on this journey, which was to find my confidence and really just commit to being who I am in the moment. I didn't want to come out this perfect thing and be like, yeah, I've been a perfect stand-up comedian the whole time. I wanted to say, no, I suck, and I'm probably going to suck for a long time. And at the very least, if the only value you get out of me is me going on that journey and discovering that, I can definitely give you that. Can't promise I'll ever be good, but at least I'll show you my journey, and I'll be real honest and authentic about it.
That's a hell of an emotional hurt locker to almost deliberately put yourself into.
Yeah.
Like, had you built up some tools or anything to brace or to prepare for how that was going to feel? Or did you go in a little bit blind and have to work it out as you were navigating it?
No, I definitely went into it blind, but it was just with the, my mum is a, beautiful Fijian woman. She brought me and my brothers up and very much in the Fijian, and don't get me wrong, it's definitely a Māori way, but I guess we're definitely brought up along the whole Fijian idea of gratitude and treasuring your moments. Very basic ideas, but like Fijian culture really, really delve deep into these. And so for me, I guess that's how I've treated my career in a way that's also detrimental to me. Like, I'm not painting it like I'm some like fucking, like golden child. But I guess I treated it with that idea of like, this is one moment, and, not to get overly spiritual, but like, most people in their life only ever get given one. So you've got to treat it like it's not, this is it. And so I went into it not really knowing what to expect, knowing I didn't have the tools, knowing I didn't really have anything, but with that one thing of, I'm grateful that this has even come. And if this is the only one I get, I'm grateful for that. And I've just got to go in, and the only thing that I can really do, the only thing I have the tool to be, is just to be myself and be authentic and real about that. And I still, to be honest, feel really embarrassed about it to this day, because you never want to present yourself in a way that you don't want to waste the people's time that have supported you. And I think that's what the part that's embarrassing for me. But at the end of the day, I guess I've at least tried to continue that journey authentically and show, like, I appreciate you being there. This is me trying to grow and continue to do so. And at the very least, you didn't get what I wanted you to get out of that moment. So I hope you feel that payback from what I then try and use that for.
For those that didn't come to the show, like at the same time, with what you've explained about how you were feeling and how those at the show might have been, your profile is still growing as a result of it, right? So what does it look like these next few years? Like, is it a brand opportunities presenting? Like, is money starting to come in? I know you start doing writing and producing shows. Like, are there just lots of opportunities coming up and you're trying to figure out what the right one is?
Yeah, pretty much. Oh, bro. To be honest, man, and I mean, by the time this comes out, I would have announced it, but and this honestly isn't a plug, but it's one thing that I never really talk about. But like, that period after all that, fuck, it was hell, because before that was really, really difficult, and there was a lot of shit sort of going on in my life that was really hard. But after that was harder, man, because you kind of get put in this position where a lot of people are sort of giving you opportunities. But it's that thing of, you don't have the tools to actually even know how to deal with them. You're expected to sort of just be on and know exactly what to do in this moment. But people don't give you the grace or the context that, a year and a half before that, I was sleeping in my car.
Mm.
They don't really give you that. And I'm not asking them for that, but I'm just more giving an idea of why that was so difficult. Because you pretty much get in this position and people just expect you to know everything like you've been there forever. So that was hard, man.
And they can't relate. Like, when you're struggling in your car, people can relate to that. When you're struggling because of all of the opportunities that are presented to you and you don't know how to navigate that, that's not relatable to the everyman, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize that there's not a lot of money in New Zealand. So after, I guess, the money that I made from my tour sort of ran out, I wasn't getting like $1 million. I was getting opportunities, but these opportunities don't pay, millions and millions of dollars. But you've now effectively got to capitalize on this moment, but you don't have the resources to do so. So I was now in the basically in the same position I was when I was living out of my car financially. But now I had a profile where it's not like you have an image to upkeep, but you do have like things you need to go to. And like, I'll give you an example. Like I remember this place were like, oh, we're going to pay you. And I was broke. And this was after I'd kind of broken through. And I think at this point, maybe I'd filmed like Celebrity Treasure Island already, but it hadn't been like paid or whatever. It was like in this weird sort of in between. And this place was like, oh, come through to Wellington to do some kind of partnership thing. And we'll fly you down and you just pay for like all the stuff that you go do and we'll reimburse you. And I remember being like, how do I tell them that I don't have the money? Like, can you just pay me the money before? But I didn't really know how to do it. So I didn't know, like, can I ask them to just give me the money? Because they were like, yeah, no, just pay for it and, we'll reimburse you. And it was like a silly, small amount, like 20, 30 bucks. And I was like, how do I pay for this? Like, they've gotten me this because I'm now in this like spotlight, but I don't really know what the fuck I'm supposed to do here. So it was getting in a lot of those moments where, people sort of think because at this time I was also pouring so much money into like trying to grow Westpark, which I did, made pretty much every single business mistake you can make. But basically all my money that I was sort of making outside of it was going back into the business. So when it came to anything that I was needing to do, I really had nothing. And I was finding myself in so many of these little situations where people were expecting me to be in places and do certain things, and I just literally like couldn't afford to do them. And that's a whole sort of different dynamic that you sort of wrestle with yourself. You're like, damn, how do I be open and honest about my circumstances here?
How many years ago are we talking now, this period?
Damn, that would have been like 2021, 2022. And so only like two.
Yeah, well, that's what I wondered. Like, has it changed? Like, where are things at?
Oh, yeah, definitely a lot more stable now, especially as I wound down like a lot of, because at the time, Westpark were trying to be, like I had people basically working full time for me as contractors. And so we were doing like a lot, and I was trying to be really ambitious with the things I was trying to push through with the company. And so I was just pouring kind of all my money into it. Because effectively, the way where I really fucked up was, for me in 2020, I'd broken through and I really was aware that I was one of probably the most privileged brown people in my position, because there's a lot of brown people that were prominent on social media. There was a lot of brown people on television. There wasn't really anyone that had the privilege of being in both spaces. And I felt like I'd kind of cracked the code in being in this like middle ground that not many people get the opportunity to be in. But it's because I really understood the connection between like online content and how to make it for a broader audience. And for me, I kind of felt, to be honest, and I feel like this is quite a brown thing. The first thing we do whenever we get anything is we think, okay, how do we give back? So Westpark became... Yeah,
you're talking to this guy.
Right. We're so it's a great thing about us, but it's also like the source of all our strife. Puts us in so much shit, eh?
Time,
money,
yeah, emotion, energy,
bro. And I I had only just come into this thing. I had no idea what the fuck I was doing, and here was me thinking, okay, now I have to give all this opportunity back to my community and to brown people, and figure out how to get brown people into spaces that we're not in, even though I'm only barely just in it myself. I thought I kind of had this obligation to do it. And so I was just pretty much just making as much money as I could, pouring it back into the company to pay contractors, to try and get projects up and running. And it was just like a money pit. And so, I was on Celebrity Treasure Island. I was getting these shows picked up overseas and bro, I was broke on my ass. We had a office on Common Street. And I go to lunch with people and just wouldn't eat because I didn't have 20, 30 bucks to my name, because it was all going back into the company. So I just kept getting myself in these situations where I was trying too hard to make the next jump up to the next level, because I had no idea what the fuck the reality of that even is. I didn't know how people actually operate. And really I was just cosplaying what I thought you were supposed to do. And I thought at some point eventually you just get invited up to the next place. And so that's why, you know, those few years, like actually after breaking through, were so difficult for me.
Were you looking for like guidance or help from anybody as well, or are you just plowing through?
That was another thing was, you know, I'd really kind of alienated myself from the New Zealand comedy scene because, to be honest, I had like a lot of resentment for them because, you know, they were not really giving me any support as I was coming through. And so as I then broke through, you know, my attitude was just constantly like, well, fuck them, really. Like, but then the irony of that was kind of the only community that I was really a part of until then. So when I alienated myself from the comedy community, I kind of didn't really have anyone. And I had a lot of people on television that were giving me that were really helping me move into this new space. But then I was scared to tell them like what my actual circumstances were because they were in these positions where I really wanted to get to. And I felt like I had to kind of fake where I was at in order for my time to be like, you know, even worth theirs. And it's just this constant cycle that I just kept finding myself in. It's like, how do you move up to the next space, but you don't even have the tools to do that? The people that probably have the ability to help you, you don't feel good enough to even be like in their vicinity. And there's such a, you know, I kind of, if I harken back to like where I was kind of at when I was living out of my car, you just kind of keep putting yourself in the cracks and you keep sort of falling in that. And my problem was because I became so accustomed to that, you know, you're always going to fall back to what you is eventually your default setting. And I just kept finding myself in that. And so, yeah, I felt like I've grown so much from putting myself in that, but I was right in the middle of it around then. And that was the hardest time because there'd never been like more eyes on me really and never more pressure in my life. And I really had no one to kind of help me through it.
Man, what a maze and what a like an uncertain and unstable sort of world you're in. You know, like from the outside, the perception is, man, Joe is killing it. Like live tours and I see him in ads and he's on TV. But like inside you've got this and also the uncertainty of after this, what's next and is it going to dry up? You know, like did you think about stopping? Like has there been a point where it got to the point where you're like, shit, is this the right path for me?
It's crazy, man. Like honestly, through that time, it's been in this journey now, like after almost having moved past it and grown out of, I feel like a lot of those behaviors that got me into that situation, that's actually been the thing that's pushed me to be like, I think I'm done with it. But back then, nah. And I've actually never talked about this on a podcast. So I really appreciate you boys sort of digging this out because it's something that I even, as someone who kind of always sort of knows what to say, I still am kind of like processing my feelings on it now because I haven't really talked about it. But it's so visceral to me because I can think of, you know, all these crazy things like, you know, objectively I'm making a shitload of money because, you know, I'm doing all these like amazing opportunities. But because in order to validate my own existence in a lot of these spaces, I'm trying to like build this thing that I don't even understand what the fuck I'm doing. And I'm kind of just like looking around. I'm like, okay, surely someone helps at this point. Like I've dressed it up enough that surely someone helps here. But I mean, I didn't even have the tools to understand what that help would look like. And I think that's, you know, that's something that so many of us, I reckon, can relate to, because if you're constantly looking ahead and you're not present and you're too busy worried about like what's happening next, you drop the ball on everything that's right in front of you and you drop the ball on who's there for you right in that moment. And I think for me, if I had just stopped and just looked at, well, what are the actual things that you need right now? Then, you know, I'd probably have a house by now. But
and to peel
who needs that shit?
To peel it back even further, it's also people are personally critical of your actual body of work.
Yeah.
So you're trying to build a business, you're trying to create opportunity, you're also creating content, and you're also the feedback loop of maybe pitching ideas or throwing things to see if it sticks, and people are going, yeah, no, that's not it, Joe.
Oh, bro.
So and you've got that rejection element to it as well.
And that's like the craziest thing is, you know, you kind of look at, because where my life was before 2020 was fucking hectic. Like it was, yeah, like I said, living out of my car, but there's even so much shit that I haven't really talked about that is actually even crazier. But I was never more depressed than I was after that. which is crazy to think about, but it's because I guess that now has that thing of expectations. But I'm not going to cop out and say it's the expectations of other people. It was fully me creating this false expectation on myself of you've been, and that's why I guess what I talked about before is that the toxicity of gratitude at times is if you think something's finite, you know, you almost don't look at it for what it is because you think it's this thing that you have to like kind of hold as a holy grail. You don't actually take that step back and look at, okay, how do I actually approach this? And, you know, I was just kind of constantly in this battle of myself of you're trying to push yourself into a space you've never been in, but you're not good enough to sort of be there. And I was getting told that I wasn't good enough to be there. And that was, yeah.
So it's double negative reinforcement.
Yeah, so it's a really crazy ass time, and I'd never been lower on myself. When at the same time I'd never had like so much in front of me.
And operating in a space where you're bringing joy to other people's lives. It's a wild fucking blender of fuckedness.
It's a wild
that you're choosing to put yourself into day after day after day.
It's and you know what? Like I think I've been really self-critical in how I approached it, but then I also would love to give context as to how something like that happens, because I think that's something I've never done too. So this one's pretty out the gate. I'm just gonna say
I'm here for it
because I've never talked about this shit. Okay, shit, that's kind of wild. So there've been a lot of like scandals in the brown community around like money and businesses like and shit like that, and I don't want to like reference anything too directly. There's a lot that have made the news, and there's a lot that are kind of just like, you know, everyone kind of, it's an open secret. That's the one.
We are the same person.
Right, we are. Shut up, brother. Literally. Then there's a lot of open secrets, and one of the crazy things is, you know, when we often talk about brown people getting like left out of opportunity, I think we've become desensitized to what that means. I think we think of it exclusively as there's opportunity here that certain people don't get, and there's opportunity, and this group of people don't get that, you know. Very basic. I think people understand that so much that they're fucking sick of hearing it. And to anyone sick of hearing it, fuck them. But the thing that they don't talk about as much is like who comes in effectively like in replacement of that opportunity. Who comes in as the infrastructure that we don't get access to? Because there are people. And to be honest, that's why you see a lot of brown creators doing like when NFTs blow up. That's why you saw so many doing that. Because we don't get the money that other people get. And so we're more susceptible to taking those kinds of things. You heard of a lot of like open secrets of, you know, people taking deals, getting ripped off. And you hear that predominantly in the brown community, and in particular the brown creator community. And those are just the ones that you hear about, because there's even crazier shit, and fuck it, I'll just say it, where kind of the underbelly get involved. And bro, I was in that shit too. Not in that I ever took part, but it presents itself to you. Because when you really look at all of that, there's one thing that a lot of these places like see that makes them predatory, as they see vulnerability. They see like your potential, but they see that, okay, we know the system isn't looking after you, but hey, I'll come over here, pat you on the back. I'm your friend. Yeah, fuck the oppressor. Like, we'll take care of you. And bro, when you got nothing, like that shit is like a fucking lifeline. And there's so many examples, and I'm not going to say any, but you know, you can look it up yourself, of people that had to take it for whatever reason. And to be honest, even though I didn't, I don't blame them, because it's hard, like it was when I was living out of my car, when you got like nothing, but it's harder when it's just right on the horizon, and the systems that are set up supposedly to support you, like basically don't want you, but you still need that support in order to get to the next place. So where do you turn to? And for a lot of brown like creators, brown people like in, you know, sort of prominent positions, those systems are like so ready to pounce on that vulnerability, and they do. And to be honest, that's the hardest shit, is to turn that shit away. Especially when you're in a position like I was, where you need it so badly. And I think that's the thing that people don't talk about when it comes to like the experience of being someone of color in this space. They talk about the exclusion of opportunity, but they don't talk about what comes into your life because of
vacuum,
that.
Yeah.
It's scary shit, man.
So what's your message to others that might, with the experience you've got, is it sort of find people around you, like build a team, look for support, or what can you say?
It's hard, bro, because, you know, everything that I sort of talked about was why I was so hell-bent on making West Park like be a thing, and why I was so desperate, because my thing was, these people are nipping at our ankles and we need that help. So like, how do I create some kind of infrastructure that supports, that fills this gap so that we don't need that shit anymore? And
that's a hell of a responsibility to feel like you've got to take on your shoulders.
Oh, but it's not because I come from any place where I'm like, I feel like I can help. It's just because, I had this experience. I know this is a real thing, and I don't want anybody to have to fall into this shit again. And again, yeah, like you said, Shay, like, it is a hell of a fucking responsibility to feel, but you only feel it because you're almost like scared for anyone else to fall into it too. So honestly, the biggest thing that I will say, and this is going to sound so like weird and kind of crazy, but it's so hard, bro, because so many of these places will present you, and the places that had the biggest detriment to my mental health, and to be honest, to my career, presented themselves to me as like an ally of me. And how do you do that when there's also another place that you've never felt a part of that's also made a point of making sure that you feel like you're not a part of it too? You don't really know who the fuck to like trust or who actually has your best interests in mind. My thing for me is, I think the biggest lesson that I had to learn was that at the end of the day, my family and my loved ones were really like who I needed to lean on, which is ironic because at the time when that was like surrounding me, they weren't in my life. And so, as kind of trivial of advice this sounds, I hope like the context that I give it in like really drives home that meaning. It's the people that know you that got you. And they may not know jack shit about what your experience is and what you're going through, but like you got to lean on the people that know you. And for some people that's not family. So I'm not saying family for like a specific reason. It's just the people that know you, the people that you know like love you and have your best interests, regardless of whether they have experience or not, or understand what like exactly what you're going through. Those are the people you have to like keep closest to you, because it's crazy the kind of people that it's crazy the way that people will try and, see your light and take advantage of it, see what your potential is and take advantage of it. And when you're somebody who's been taught, have gratitude for everybody, anybody from a position of hierarchy deserves your respect. Well, you can't really differentiate any of that because you're just blindly going like, yeah, fuck, okay, you seem like you know what you're talking about. I've been taught I have to respect you. Let's just go into this. And so it's it's all these kinds of things that people are going to hear and be like, brown people this, brown people that. It's with that context that I hope they understand, like, no, when we talk about like the brown struggle, this is what the fuck it looks like. You guys have one like view of what it could be. I'm telling you, as a young brown man, this is what it is. So yeah.
It's been clear, man. It's been good. No, it's
Appreciate
been really
it,
good. I did wonder if like the overseas stuff, like if that's a bit of an escape, going to America and spending time there because you're removing yourself physically from all of this.
That's such a good way to describe it, which I never thought of it. It totally is. And if anything, America presented itself to me as like for no better way to describe it, like a chance to run away, for real. And I think at the time, like I really needed it because I think I was so disillusioned within myself and where I was at and who I was that, okay, this place that doesn't know me wants me to go there. Okay, I can really just come in as myself. I don't really know what the fuck I've done here. Like, I've kind of made a mess of New Zealand and who I feel like I am here. At least this presents a new opportunity for me to redefine that. Which, spoiler alert, it doesn't. But if you're not good at home, you're not good anywhere. Yeah. But that at the very least, early on was like what I thought that represented to me. So yeah,
is America the kind of place that initially welcomes you with open arms because you are different, because you are from this part of the world, because you could be the next Taika, you could be the next Flight of the Conchords, you could be the next big thing?
But it's crazy. Like it does. Americans have a beautiful gift of making you, like, they know how to make you feel special. But then that's their problem, is they make everyone feel special. So you quickly learn you aren't special. But they know how to make you feel special. And that's kind of like what it was to me, I guess, initially. And it felt like this new thing that I think was gonna, all the stuff I've been feeling back home, like, I could just sweep that under the rug and that's nothing to me. This is gonna solve all that because this is me starting new. And these people care about me because I'm new and different and so on, and, whatever. That's what that experience was to me at the start.
So you're going over there, are you sort of pitching scripts? Are you just doing stand-up? Like, what was the purpose?
Yeah, it was sort of a bunch of stuff. It was kind of, I was talking like their speak, it's a big thing to like meet the town, like get around and have meetings and shit. And it's all bullshit. Yeah. None of it's real. Yeah. Everyone works at a production company for, who, what, and whatever. Basically how every Māori is related to Stan Walker. Everyone in Hollywood knows someone famous, which for both of those things is a fuck all amount of people.
But you have some genuine interactions with some real stars.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely the irony in that I was like real lucky I've been real lucky to meet like so many, but that, I guess, is the hard thing with America, is when everything's big, sort of nothing's big, and because they big everything up, you don't actually really know if anything is or isn't worth your time. So that was like a hard thing as well to navigate.
I'd heard a yarn that you saw Theo Von in a diner or something, or
juice bar,
and you just go up and talk to him and end up as part of his show.
Yeah.
How did that all play out?
That's crazy. You guys know this. Yeah, literally. Like he We're in this place called Topanga in LA, which is quite like a niche place, to be honest. It would be like it would be like me being in Devonport and seeing like one of the most famous comedians in the world. Like a real random place to be, a random place for a tourist to go. And I just see him walking across the road, and I was with one of my best mates, Grace Palmer. She's an actress in LA, and she was telling me afterwards.
Jason Gunn's stepdaughter.
Yeah.
Shout out, Jason.
Shout out, Jace. Yeah, that's Grace's stepdad. Fuck, he's been on here.
Yeah, legend.
Shout out JG, man.
Yeah.
Grace said like later on, because they were at another store, she was like, I just knew Joe would walk up to him because she just knows what I'm like. But he just walked across the road, and I was like, oh fuck, that's Theo Von. And then he went into the juice bar. I just walked up to him. I was like, Theo, sup, bro? And then we just started yarning, and we yarned in this juice spot for like an hour. Yeah, and that basically like started our whole sort of, I guess call it friendship.
Please tell me what he's really like.
Bro, he's a buzzy dude, to be honest. He's pretty. He like in person is the quirkiness of himself, but take away the context of like it being funny. So he's just a buzzy dude, to be honest. He made this joke, like I told T, my partner, this, because this is 100% just what he's like, was he was asking me, and it's funny, like he knows T now as well. He was asking me, he's like, yeah, so what does your girlfriend do? And I was like, oh, she's a nurse. And I was telling him, I was like, so yeah, it's so funny, talking to a pediatric nurse who has to, I come to her with my like problems with TV, and I'm like, oh, I'm trying to pitch this TV show and no one really wants it. It's hard to take that to a pediatric nurse who's, she's had to deal with like a kid like dying on her job. It's just such different worlds. And then he was just like, yeah, but The TV show, though. Would be nice, though. But he said it complete straight face, like not even laughing, and then like almost looks away. So it's not even, you're kind of like, that didn't even feel like a joke, really. So he's a real buzzy dude. And I'd be lying if I said like, I really like get his buzz. And I'm not going to overemphasize how close we are. Like we're not super, super close. But in all my interactions with him, yeah, think his quirkiness, but just it's not him trying to be funny.
Yeah,
and that's him. It's real, and almost he tones it down on those podcasts. To be honest,
that's it. Yeah,
but he invited you onto like Theo Von and Friends, and
bro, it was so weird because you get used to this thing in LA where people just say shit and you like don't really think they mean it. You pick onto that pretty quickly. Everyone's like, yeah, I'm gonna. Bit like Kiwis. Yeah, I'll hit you up. But the difference with Americans is they'll tell you like a time. Kiwis will be like, yeah, bro, fuck, let's hang out next week, whatever. Americans will be like, hey, man, let's go for dinner tonight. Like, yeah, 6, should we say 6? And like, they don't mean it. So like, don't turn up. I shouldn't say Americans, I'll say Californians in particular. Like, they're like Kiwis, but with
detail.
They try and lie. Yeah, they lie with detail. And so you get real accustomed to that. And he was like, oh, bro, hop on my show at the Comedy Store tonight in the main room. And that room is like, seats 450 people. Like, it's a massive room. You would argue is like the most iconic stand-up stage in the country, really. And you could argue in the world. And I was like, oh, yeah, fuck, whatever. Like, I'm never going to hear from this dude again. And then my manager hit me up. He's like, hey, Theo's manager, like, what's he's like, what's this show? And I was like, oh, well, you know, brother, like we just hung out and basically best mates now. And he's like, okay, man. Like, I think he was just weirded out by the fact that I just bumped into him and just walked up to him.
Have you got a set ready to go for that? Like, are you trying to tweak it and tailor it to that specific audience?
Yeah. And I definitely did some material that I would never, ever do again. But
Madeline McCann stuff. Turns out it doesn't play in America either.
had to pull out the classics. but yeah, it was, I mean, that was a whole experience in itself. And they were like, bro, it was crazy. There were fucking hella celebrities in the audience.
Dave Chappelle?
Nah.
It's a different night.
T.I.?
Sorry, Stevie, different night. Nah, Ashton Kutcher was in the audience. And Joel Kinnaman. You know Joel Kinnaman?
I do not.
From Suicide Squad? Nah.
Which character is
Shit
that?
movie. Yeah, true.
The Weasel one?
There's famously 40 characters in that movie.
Oh, wow.
Nah, it's funny you asking, me just saying the one character, even though there's 40 of them. But I thought that was crazy. I was like, fucking hell, like, this is insane. Yeah. And I got told specifically, like, you're not allowed to point out to them.
You have to look at them directly in the eye?
Yeah, not allowed to do that. Not allowed to acknowledge them. But in the middle of my set, I was like,
Ashton Kutcher said tonight.
Right, that's literally what I did. I was like, holy fuck, Ashton Kutcher. Anyway, fuck, that's crazy, bro. What's up? But yeah, no, that whole experience was it was cool as hell, and it was real fun.
Did you have a Dave Chappelle interaction?
Bro, that one was crazy. So I don't know how much he'll appreciate me sharing this. I'm sure he won't give a fuck. So the head of like, at one point was probably the most iconic comedy festival in the world, is this comedy festival called Just for Laughs. Montreal. Very important in stand-up. It's kind of considered like where all big stand-up comedians make their first sort of break. Bro, the head of that festival, the founder CEO, is from Palmerston North.
Yeah, he's mates with Hamish Pinkham. He's his uncle or something like that.
His cousin.
Yeah.
So there's a dude named Bruce Hills. He's a Canadian guy, but his dad's like, I don't know if he won't give a fuck. His dad's Kiwi. He grew up in Palmy.
Yeah.
So like I became real good friends with Bruce because, we kind of shared that connection. And this guy is like the most connected guy probably in comedy. And so we were out for dinner one night and he's like, I really want you to meet a friend of mine. And in my head I was like, I know it's someone famous. And he was like, yeah, Dave Chappelle. And I was already like, holy fuck, this is
a big one.
You would say that's a big one. But I couldn't believe it. It was like, dang, I cannot believe this is how this sort of happens. So we get to the improv because Dave's about to do like one of his. He famously does these like after midnight, like 3-4 hour sets at the improv. And how the improv does it is they'll put the tickets up like really late at night and they won't say who is on, but everybody kind of knows if it's at this time, it's probably Dave Chappelle. And bro, he'll go on stage for like 4 hours. And I got to go and see one of these. So we're upstairs kind of waiting for him to come up. And I just hear like the security all coming up, you know, they're heavy footed. And I'm like, oh shit, this is Dave. These 3 like big black dudes walk in. And I'm like, here he is. And T.I. walks in. And I was like, holy fuck, this is crazy. The funniest thing with T.I. was I shook hands with him and I was like, hey, he was like, oh, what's up? And I was like, hey, what's up, bro? How are you? And he goes, like, looks at me, he's like, what the fuck is that? I'd never heard like the accent before. So that was such a crazy experience. Then got to meet Chappelle and like that was the whole thing. But yeah, that is how crazy LA is, that you kind of just get to meet all these people. And I mean, shout out to Hilsey for that opportunity. But yeah, you do just get to kind of mix and mingle with like all these different people. And that was such a cool experience.
And you've kind of just recently returned, right?
Yeah, came back. Yeah, dang. Me and T were there in August, September.
So what's like current day? Like what does next year look like? Like where are things at? Have you got projects going on? Like have you got certainty?
Yeah, so I'm going on tour next year, which I actually announced tonight, goes on sale tomorrow. Oh, tonight being Wednesday, the whatever.
Tickets will be sold out by the time this goes live.
Probably, yeah. It'll all be out by the time this goes live. But yeah, going on tour next year, NZ, Australia, and then hopefully UK, US as well. And then I've sold a TV show in the US. So that's what I've been over there doing.
Can you talk about that?
Depends when this comes out.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's still pretty early days. So like, there's not really like a whole lot.
But that's it. Like, congratulate. Like, that's what I feel like downplaying it. Like, sold a TV show seems like a huge deal.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's yeah, it's still in like the very early days of it. But I mean, to even be in that position is.
But what does that process look like? You've written out a whole TV show. Is it just you? Is there a team of you? Like script writing? Are you directing it? Like, how does it all work?
So at the moment, it's just me, my manager, and a producer who's come on to like work the script basically. And pretty much how it works is you sort of develop it within this production company, and then you like move it into a studio, who they become then the ones to like put it all together. And you know, a studio, for example, could be like a Disney or FX or HBO, you know, and then moves into one of those sort of places, and then that's where it then gets made. So I'm still kind of in like the earlier part of that process. But yeah, that's kind of why I've been like spending time.
Is it too epic? Like, yeah. You must be buzzing about it.
But it's pretty crazy. But
do you feel like you have to mute your celebrations or mute your enthusiasm because we live in New Zealand?
Bro, it's weird. I think when I was younger, yeah. But, bro, this is probably weirder to say. I probably feel like desensitized to it now, to be honest. And weirdly, I think it's more just where I'm at in my life and what sort of excites me. I'm passionate about writing and stuff, so I love that. But then the idea of doing it, it's not this like big thing, I guess, for me. But you know what, Shay? I reckon probably a part of it is that for sure. It's probably where it starts that in my head. But then I think at the same time, I think I'm also just probably in a different place with it. I reckon 2 years ago, this would have been like the greatest thing to ever happen to me. It's like proving all my haters wrong, and it's proving everything right to myself of like, yeah, fuck, yeah. But I think because I've gotten into a point now where I'm almost feel so far removed from that, it weirdly just feels like, oh, this is just something, you know, kind of that I'm doing. I reckon once it really gets closer to being a thing, because there's still so much to happen before it actually like becomes a show. I reckon that will become more sort of apparent as me feeling like it's celebrating. I still feel like there's probably a lot in between before I celebrate it.
So, you flipped it back on us and you talk about the work that goes in to get to a podcast to where it is today. Is that the same as a TV show? Is that like, this is the year 2 of our kind of podcast journey, to put it in those terms? Like there's still levels to get to until you really feel like, okay, wicked, I've done something amazing here.
Yeah. If this show hits all like the rungs in the way that I hope it does, then this show will probably be a thing in like maybe 2 years.
Right.
But probably 2 years anyone knows anything about it. And that's just how long the process is, which is also why I guess I'm not like super enthusiastic about it just yet, because there is still so much to go. But also I think, and it's something I'm trying to do now, it's just being excited that it even just got to this point. If nothing really happens from there, I could say, dang.
Yeah, because
I was able to do that. So.
I feel like even just to get the conversation to pitch the idea is a big deal, to come from here to do it there.
Bro, and you know what? You raise a good point. Maybe I do probably dull that part of myself, because for me, it's like, it's crazy the fact that, fuck, I've even been to America once, let alone have gone enough times for this to be a thing. So, bro, you do raise a good point. And I think now I actually take that back. Like, I think I feel bad that I feel desensitized to it, because I think that goes against my whole mantra of like just being grateful for these things in the moment. And I guess I hadn't really thought of that until you said that.
But also, is it like you're desensitized because there's more rejections than yeses in your field of work?
Yeah. Yeah. You do get that.
So like a no is the norm.
And almost it's that thing of, and this is probably a really bad thing. This is a really bad thing that I am almost like anticipating. I think I do that a lot. And I wonder if anybody listening relates on that thing of, you almost anticipate disappointment to save yourself the disappointment. And that's something that I'm probably trying to work through as well.
I feel like the best thing we have is the partnership, because no one else can possibly understand like what our world looks like except for the other one. So we have these moments and we're like, fuck man, like holy shit. And we have little moments of like overwhelming gratitude and like pinch you moments, but we're both experiencing it together.
Yeah.
But I imagine for you, you're the only one who is on this journey. You're the only one that's selling out tours in New Zealand and Australia and doing a hit show. So it's kind of, it's very much, I can see why you'd be desensitized to it, because it becomes normal, but you don't have someone else who's there, who's with you, that can sort of pull you out of it and have little moments of celebration and sort of appreciate the bigger picture.
Yeah, but that's such a great way to put it. And I think the thing that I've probably struggled with, that I've done really badly, is I think I've really struggled with people that probably don't understand it. And to be honest, probably push them away, which I feel lately, especially I've been talking to T a lot about like how I'm really trying to turn a new leaf on that. But I think it's just, I'm kind of at the end of that thing of being so obsessed with looking into the future and what's coming next, that I'm trying to, I guess finally honor that lesson that I had to learn of appreciate who's here now. Because I think for me, you get so caught up in like, what's going wrong and what you're trying to do. And anybody that kind of doesn't understand that, you're just like, oh, fuck, well, like, why should I bother explaining this? Like, you don't get what the hell, you don't get why I'm stressed all the time and don't really know what I'm doing with my life. So why explain it?
In that regard, then, is it refreshing to have someone at home that lives in the normal world?
Oh, yeah.
Because I've got that with Doc Brown, where I'll come home and she'll be like, what happened today? And I'll rattle through these ridiculous situations that we find ourselves in. And I'm like, actually, tell me about yours.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'm not saying it's mundane, like, because she does amazing things in she's in the medical field as well. She does obviously with the nickname Doc. But like, it's quite cool to come home and just be like, I don't know, just have that. Oh, fuck, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here.
I know exactly what you're saying.
It's a filter through your stuff that you're dealing with. And then you, like, imagine she's dealing with really important situations in her own work that put context around the world that operates outside of this kind of space that you're in.
Yeah, and she has every opportunity to probably like, ground me, I guess, in a way of.
That's what I was trying to say.
What she's experiencing through, pediatric work versus what the fuck I'm doing, which is really just like talking about bullshit.
Just cracking people up.
Right, just fucking talking absolute bullshit. Like, she has every opportunity to like ground me and really like remind me. But I think that's why I'm so grateful for Tia, is that all she really does is validate me. And she's done such like a hard job of understanding. Like I said, I need to give people more of the leeway of that it is a hard thing to understand. People even in the space don't understand. And like, not only has she made the effort to try and understand, she's done it so much so that she kind of knows it just as much as like I do, which, what better could you ask for a partner than one that not only tries to validate your experience, but understand it so much that they know why you do the things you do and almost be able to give you that leeway for yourself, even in ways that you don't. And yeah, so always grateful to her for doing that. And I think that's why like it's always such like a hard journey for me mentally to try and like break through these things, because I now have to think of like, well, this person's doing it for me. Like why? Like I almost owe it to her to do it for myself too. And that's where a lot of these like changes have come. I'd love to say it's because I'm like this mindful, like fucking I think about all this shit, but nah, it's not really. It's because this person is working me up to it and made me realize that there's like more important things that I have to, really understand myself for.
I think that segs nicely into our last chapter, which is titled Future Gazing. And it features Uncle Wayne, who's come in off a bit of a long run, and he's got about 6 questions in a row, which I'm just going to throw at you.
Yeah, it was like a monologue. It was good.
This is crazy.
He said, what should we ask Joe? And he said, ask him about how successful he wants to be. What's his actual dream of what he wants to do? Where does he want to take himself? And how does he see him going to get there? Has he got a plan? Does he have a business plan? That's Uncle Wayne.
Damn.
I mean, there's a lot more to it, but let's.
Yeah, I would love to hear what you guys talk to him about, Because I love my uncle, man. He's like, my mum always says that I'm sort of like a spitting image of him, personality-wise. He's a very outgoing. Everyone loves my uncle, like very outgoing, life of the party. But he's also like really deep and introspective, and he loves understanding people and like why they do things. And I really got that from my uncle. And like hanging out with him, he was always the type to like, it was annoying as fuck, but he'd bump into people that he doesn't even know and like talk to them for ages. And I'd be like, bro, like, do I have to stand here in the supermarket like waiting for you to have this fucking 30-minute combo? And it's so funny, like I do that shit now. But yeah, and my mum is like so much like that too. But I guess my uncle is the perfect example for that. I love my old man, but my old man's like he's very quiet and reserved. And I got so many great things from my dad. And then I guess my uncle opened so many parts of me up about myself that I've, I think probably reflecting like the work I do. So shout out to my uncle. But when it comes to, I guess, what I always wanted to be, honestly, was like, it's funny, man. I really wanted to be like an asset to my people, for real. In big ways and small ways. I joke around about it all the time, but I really envy how Māori all want to be Stan Walker's cousin. I envy how all Samoans want to be The Rock's cousin. I love that whole idea so much that it's like an ongoing joke for myself. Like, how cool that you make your people so proud that they want to fake an association to you. In the best way. Like, I always wanted to be that to my people, but not in like a facetious way, because I've been like an asset to them. And for me, West Park was that, trying to be the best stand-up comedian was that, it was me trying to find all these ways that I could be that to them. And I guess that's why they didn't work out, because it was me doing what I thought would make me an asset to my community in those ways. So I guess for me, my biggest thing now is like figuring out what that actually means in an authentic way to myself. Because to be honest, you know, being Māori and being Fijian, this probably, you know, sounds toxic, but like it's really fucking like important to me. And I'm the first person that always says, you know, your culture isn't everything to you. You know, you've got to have your own identity and stuff. But I think for somebody that actually didn't have that growing up and had to almost rediscover it, I guess that's why my relationship with it is different. It's not something that was inherent to me and that I felt obligated to. It was something that I almost felt like I needed to earn. And then now that I've been able to like embrace it in the way I can, it's like this like treasure to me that I just like want to hold constantly, is how proud I am of my two cultures. And I guess that's why I'm on this journey where, like, to be honest, if I do nothing else in my career, I just hope that it's framing it in a way of like, I hope I can at least say that I've like tried to be there, because I know I can't ever be, and I know the version of myself that I want to be in these people's eyes is actually never going to be real. But at the very least, if I can look at myself and say like, I gave it my best shot for this thing that I really hope to be, you know, I think that's how you can frame it in a way that actually is achievable within yourself. And I reckon that's all I want to be, to be honest.
The thing that stood out to me throughout this whole chat is your emotional IQ and your self-awareness, like answering that question and realizing, you know, how you thought about something and how you need to reframe it or change it. Like, I think it's incredibly rare, and it comes through in your comedy too. It's the self-awareness you have of the world around you and how you can sort of articulate it to us. It's so good, man.
Appreciate it, bro.
Yeah.
It means a lot, man, honestly.
Yeah. It's been such a cool chat.
I want to piggyback off that sort of, and Wayne spoke about this in terms of like, it's all well and good framing the sleeping in the car and the hardship and the resilience that it takes to overcome those sorts of things. But from his perspective, it was more talking about the things that you've done to champion yourself and to put yourself in the position where you are now. And his kind of observation or his read on it was that you might not be the biggest success there, but you will boot the door down and you will drag others through that will do far more than maybe you have done. But somebody has to do that.
Yeah.
And he was really advocating for you to do what you've done today, which is to talk about your professional goals and your professional and the thought and the guess, because he's come from a privileged position of knowing and having those conversations with you, the thought that goes into your work and the layers to what you do to try and do that thing that you hold so dearly to you, which I can totally see, because I feel the same thing about my stuff, you know, it's being, it's really hard to articulate when you haven't felt like you've been something, but you can be something for other people. There is a massive, it's a massive like fuel to just keep going.
Bro, you nailed it. And I think you nailed it in like a way that I was like trying to figure out how to say before, but I really couldn't. I think when I say be an asset to my people, it's doing whatever I can to like uplift them, and that actually has nothing to do with me. And West Park was like my first attempt at that. And whilst that didn't succeed in the way I wanted it to, I hope people understood that at the very least, that's my intention, and that's been my intention from day one. Is I'm not in this shit for myself. I want to get to the highest point so that I can lift someone higher than me. And that always feels weird to say, because it sounds like, you know, it sounds like a bit self-indulgent and self-aggrandized, which is why I actually kind of avoid talking about it. But if you kind of look at how I've approached my career, like I've done that, you know, I've always kind of led with that intention. Because of that thing, exactly, you know, what I was brought up on is the like my moment is finite. I'm not going to be here forever. And I would be doing my people a disservice and an injustice if for the moment that I'm in the room, I don't even just like put my foot in the door and let someone else in. And I'll do that in ways even when I don't really know what the fuck I'm doing. even when I'm not established, even when I really have no leg to stand on when it comes to asking for something extra, if the only favor that I get to ask of someone is to like at least give someone else a look in as well alongside me, that like I'll take that every single time. And that's only because so many people have done a version of that for me to get to where I am, and it's paying homage to that.
It's been a surreal experience having a conversation with two Seamuses, eh?
Yeah.
You guys are so fucking alike in every
Fuzzy
way.
many a doppelganger.
It's fuzzy. Did you have anything else?
No.
Yeah.
I'll burst into tears if I go with anything
All right,
else.
I'll land the plane, but I'll give you the last words, man. Thanks again for coming in and sharing your time with us. Like, it's been such an epic convo. So many listeners are going to get so much out of it. So let's stay in touch, man. I feel like
keen, genuinely.
I feel like there's a real connection here. Shay?
Genuinely.
Yeah, that's it. I'll leave the last word for Seamus too.
Yeah, no, I honestly appreciate it, boys. I think, you know, it's not often you even reflect back on your life or get to look at it. So, you know, you boys are, I hope you hear it a lot. And if you don't, like, you know, I'll say it. I don't think you realize the impact of, people will probably talk about the impact you have on like the audience, but, you know, I'll say the impact that you've had on me personally as a man. For you to like give me this opportunity to like reflect back on my life and like really do it in a way that I've never experienced, which is even talk to the people in my life. For someone like me who's always struggled to even do that within myself, and, you know, who actually like leads their life probably with like a lot of like internal shame and guilt, and like, you know, I'm super tough on myself because I only lead with like what I hope to be and what I hope I can contribute. And you know, when you never ever feel like that, it can be like quite a lonely existence, to be honest. And it's something I'm working through and trying to be better at. But, you know, for you guys to do this the way you have and conduct it the way you have, I don't think you realize like how much it has a personal impact on the person that you're doing it with. For you guys, it probably just feels like another day of mahi. But for me, I'm going to look back at this there for you guys put in to even just learn about me and then bring that back to me for a long, long time. And even just, you know, you guys involving like my partner in it, she's so grateful for that. And, you know, you guys probably hear how much of an impact that you have on the audience, but for you to have an impact on like me as a man, yo, I couldn't be more grateful for that. So thank you to you boys for that, honestly. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Joey. It's so cool.
Appreciate you boys.
You too.